Want to give a big shout out to Joanna and Amanda for being on this podcast and giving me your time. I was literally clapping my hands listening to the replay. It was such a powerful viewpoint changing conversation. We talked about goalless thinking, the Native American culture, and one other thing that I want you to hear in the podcast. So enjoy listening to it. Have a great day and be well. Cheers.
We need to create more of our success as a vehicle that others can ride in and develop their own.
Yes, and I think that's huge. It's creating more opportunity and resources and support where now, exactly the indigenous community, people of color can dive into and being able to work with other communities. I think that's where, the difference and the change is needed, is giving those resources because that's where the barrier is getting access. So
That's
being able to
exactly
have
right.
that conversation and have that access can only enhance each other's success and help rise everyone together, right, as a community.
I call it ladders and doors, right? You need a ladder up from where you are. I've been given ladders. White people get ladders. You're born with ladders. You kidding me? And doors that are closed being opened for you. If we
I
can,
love that.
You're muted. Sorry.
no, that's just what I always sound like.
Completely silent.
Looks like I'm speaking. We're always doing that with our thoughts, but we aren't in control of it, or we don't know how to control it, I guess. This gets into all the deep stuff again. I don't know where we want to go today, but I'm ready for the ride. I'm buckled in.
I like to start with like a deeper, I'd say more difficult question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
Awesome. What's been one of
I'm
the
laughing because I'm here for that.
We're on the same
This is
page.
like my dream. I love when people do this. I'm like, thankfully, someone's finally willing to go here.
Yes.
Thank God.
Oh, I
Let's
love
do it,
this.
Ian.
Yes. Okay, great. What's been one of the most difficult and challenging parts of your life that you got through?
Okay, we can go here. Pain, emotional pain. I think I got into Buddhism. I mean, I meditated as a way of managing a lot of anger starting as a teen. I had a very even childhood, but I think something a lot of entrepreneurs learn about themselves only in retrospect is that we don't tend to do the system very well. And I couldn't accept that about myself. I thought I was the wrong one. I mean, for like most of my life, you know, and that was a wound. And I really wanted to have control over my destiny. I had a strong will like you hear my parents tell stories. At age 2, the story my dad tells is that I was in his office and I had my finger looking at his bookshelf and I hooked my finger in his book jacket and he goes, "Don't do it, Joanna." And I go, "Don't do it." I mean, just this is the personality. I just really wanted to exert my will in the world and just test the limits.
Oh, wow.
And that was not uh, a healthy path for a long time. So when I got to college, I'd struggled so much at home with my parents as an immature young person and just carried a lot of anger. And I explored poetry. There's a poem by Rumi about two hands holding my soul so it doesn't leave me in anger. And that was like my mantra for so long. So I think, we don't talk about these things. Emotional pain is something we all have and all have to manage our relationship to it. And also like legitimize it because there's like pain of being bombed in Gaza and losing your family. And there's pain of being upset about our life because we're immature, but it's pain and it's human. It's not like, and it is relative. And in an objective sense, it's like, how dare you be upset about, this privileged thing when people over here have lost their babies and their parents and have no home and are freezing and all these things. But here's what I've learned. If I've learned anything, the best we can do is to befriend that pain and find our way to keep our arms around it rather than try to surgically remove it from us and hate it.
Wow.
And that was a shift for me.
Wow. I love that. And how did you start to do that?
The darkest nights, it's like, I need help. That little moment, is everything. Speaking of portals into other realities, it's like I will seek the light. I will go to therapy. I will not end my life today. I will, reach out. I will, it's just whatever, whenever we have those defining moments. And I had a few of those in my teens, but I think a shift for me was when I went to college and I had sat down in the therapist chair for the first time in my life. I opened my mouth to speak, and all I could do was just sob and heave these sobs of like so much I'd been holding. And that was the beginning. That was the beginning of like letting pain surface, not pretending it wasn't there, beginning to relate to it. Like, I'm not going to suppress something I hate in myself anymore. I'm going to start to let it do. This comes to acting, but to do me, I'm going to let it move. It's going to create something beyond me. I'm not going to control this anymore. And then I studied Reiki, which is energy healing, and I focused on healing myself. And that was in my early 20s, and it's still something I do almost every day. Doing things with your energy, meditating on things with an intention.
I love that. And I love how it's like it's becoming a little bit vulnerable, right? And being willing to ask for help. And a lot of people are not ready to like put down those walls and, embrace that pain. I loved how you referenced that too, because we all go through it. I think everyone's journey from childhood, but it's just not knowing how to acknowledge that pain and then using that to work with it, which is incredible how you be able to overcome it and then use it in your acting as well. I think that's huge.
Yeah, we all can relate to that. I mean, we all have our version of pain, however large or small, irritation to suffering, in a given day. And all we can do is not try to change it. I mean, it's like everything. It takes so much to not try to make it stop anymore, but to shift it and be like, I'm going to let this happen to me. I'm going to sit with this, because that actually changes your relationship to the pain and starts to be a source of energy rather than a source of suffering, if that makes any sense.
I think I'm following along. You're kind of saying like being in this state of enduring through it versus rejecting or kind of pushing it away.
I agree, definitely. I would put it that way.
It's part of your human experience, right? And it's helped you. It's your character. It's you. So it's embracing it and knowing how to work with that energy, but then converting it for good. I think that's incredible.
Absolutely, Amanda. And I would also, I coach people. So when you hear people like me talk about this, then it gets to like, and I graduated and I'm done. And it's totally not that in any level. I have pain and irritation and frustration and, embarrassing, unhealthy moments like everybody else. But the way you relate to it has to be like remembering that you're never going to graduate from this. The best we can do is to hold it and manage it and be like, this is my work for the rest of my life.
Right, it's a part of you.
It's very humbling. And then you don't ever get to walk around and be like, look what I healed. I mean, I have healed a lot. Let me just say, I've healed so many things, deep, deep stuff. But the day you're done is the day you're like off the earth, Yeah. Sorry, you were going to say something. Where does that take you, Ian? Something's happening in your mind.
Yeah, totally. So there's this book that it's that viewpoint of goalless thinking. So like not having an end, not saying I'm done. And I never really conceived the thought until you put it like that. And it's like the end is when you're no longer alive. Like that's when it stops. And I love that because it's no longer this, okay, how long am I how long do I keep trying for? And it's like, you just keep going.
Yeah, it's like you can actually finally effing relax. Like we're not waiting for the big moment to happen when we grow up and have it all figured out. Like now I'm almost 43. I now understand like there are no grown-ups coming to like fix things, Like if anyone would be that, it would be me. And like, how did anyone get that job? I don't even know. But, yeah. But the best we can do is to fix like what our own mess. We're all walking around and be like, you've got a mess, you've got a mess. Like fix your own mess first. Deal with your own stuff. I think the world would be such a different place. Related to that pain we talked about, with so much like compassion for just the level of suffering we're all in all the time, and how much we pretend that we're not and get angry about it. And like we have all these layers of being angry about being angry, like what if we just turned it all inside out and all thought, how can I relate to this better so I can relax and realize, like, to your point, this isn't going to ever end. We just get better at the game.
Wow.
And we can relax in the game. Like, this is the game. This is the game we're playing. And it is a big joke. We're all living in a very big joke. We plan so many things. We have these big plans. How many of them ever, if you think about it, turned out the way we thought they would? Like, we can't seem to figure out that's actually not how things work. And it never was, and it never will be. So we have to get good at improvising, like being good on the fly, knowing ourselves really well. So when things show up that are right for us, we know and we recognize them. And when the wrong things show up, whether it's a relationship or whatever, we're like, it's gone. Wait, actually, I'm glad that's gone. And, we could make our lives easier.
Wow.
I love it. And that's what they call the game of life, right? We're all in this earth school playing, whatever role, working on building that legacy, leaving that footprint on whatever level, and embracing all the pain, joy, frustration. But that's part of that whole journey. And this is where, just going through that. I was just talking to somebody just earlier, and like she had the loss of her mom and like two other losses of family members, and just dealing with that pain and knowing, how do you cope? How do you deal? But I'm like, it's something that you learn to readjust, right? As you say, it's nothing that's going to go away, but how can you use that pain now and to move on? Because it's like we have to our new normal, right? It's like we have to relive like a new normal per se.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. My mind, for some reason, is going to the world of business and why this relates to a greater conversation, because people don't come for this conversation, I find. And I love that we're having it, but I find that people I work with come for the business success conversation, and they stay for the internal life-changing depth conversation, because they're really not different.
You say they're really not different?
They're not different. In my opinion, because I work with people who get on stage to tell their story, to talk about their business, to, raise money, sell their services, build an audience. Why does this conversation matter to them? Because there's nothing scarier than going out in the world and feeling like you have to cover for yourself, or like you've got something to hide. It's not authentic. And all of us just want to be able to relax and enjoy the ride, and like not fall off the ride or be kicked off or whatever. And this conversation is so relevant, because what we're talking about is developing inner strength for the ride, for the pain that is part of the entrepreneurial journey, for the capacity to sell something deeper than just a widget, but your business or your mission or your service, and why it's valuable. So the other piece of this is, when we're in pain and pretend we're not, the pain is actually another part of our value. It's just showing up a different way. It's like a call for help, red flag. Like, there's something happening that wants to be attended to, is really just how I think of it. And often when you talk to business owners long enough, when you get behind the closed doors about, a client, they're suffering around their value on some level, and they're stopping themselves in their business. So all of this stuff is so related, interrelated, because we are just people trying to do stuff in the world. And I guess I want to take it here because I think, like, we're doing a podcast. Who's the audience? Who's going to be interested in this? On some level, our business for a lot of us is ourselves. So this stuff gets to be really relevant. Like, how can I shift myself so I can improve my business, or vice versa.
I like that. It's crazy, like what you're saying too. And not great. Like, I really like what you're saying, because it is interesting to see that people are sticking around for those emotional connections, those, like, I would say more hardwired sort of reasons that we are together, and that people stick around each other. And it's kind of interesting to see how like the more advanced our culture becomes, it's like we've created walls. We've
Mhm.
created more barriers. We've done more things to separate ourselves. Like, yeah, we have houses and that house is right there. You'd think it'd make it easier to have a community. No. I have a TV now.
I don't need you, neighbor. It is so interesting. And remember, we live in the West in a civilized
Mm,
superpower country. So
mhm,
we are carrying a very specific view of the world. We have to remember this because there are
mm,
places in Rwanda, there are places in, upcountry Thailand. This is not reality.
mm,
People are deeply, deeply interconnected. Communities cannot survive without that fabric, and having walls up is so an issue of survival, really, to not do that. And I think something that we've lost that's cost us dearly in
mm,
our world
mm,
is not knowing how to get support
mm,
and be supported
mm,
in the way that humans, we're pack animals. Like
mhm,
no one's doing this alone.
mm,
But why did we adopt the idea that we are?
mhm, mhm,
Right. Well, that goes back to that. I don't know if you watched Blue Zone, but it showed like the importance of community and relationships and how people who are the centurions really got a good sense of that. And because we are human, we need that sense of community. And that's why I think, especially in the entrepreneur space, having networking groups and communities that we can connect with like-minded individuals, because we're all going through that roller coaster journey, those up downs all around. So you know you're not alone in that space, right? And you can resonate and go through and have that go through, I think, that learning curve a little bit easier and faster when you have other mentors and coaches like yourself around that can help guide you through some of those pitfalls. So you're like, okay, that's okay. It's part of the journey. It's part of the experience, especially as an entrepreneur, right?
Absolutely. I could not agree more. And I wonder about this sometimes. I am part of a women's entrepreneurship community, leading in that space here in Phoenix.
mhm,
And something that is so startlingly beautiful is that the
mhm,
people who show up in this space, we've when competition grows up, it becomes connection. And none of
mm,
these women are here to take each other down. Because you see mean girl stuff even in the adult world.
mm,
But increasingly, I think like, good job, Joanna. I've really cleaned up who I relate to. I just don't find myself in those conversations almost ever. And when I do, it doesn't last very long because I
mm.
name it. And that usually makes someone go away because it doesn't feel good to be like,
Ah,
I'm not here for this. Because part of how mean girl culture persists is staying silent and like going along with it.
oh.
Right. But if you're really about what you're about in the world, which for
Mhm,
me is connecting and supporting, I do my best. I'm not here to say anyone's perfect, let alone myself. But when you know what you're about, those connections, those blue zone, those relationship, I think it's more possible when you know what you're here to do, when you meet people in your network, when you meet a mentor. And likewise, I mean, to your point, Ian, like it's neat that people stay for this, but you don't get everyone in these conversations. Let's be clear. You get the people who are here for this work and we recognize each
mhm.
other.
I like a couple parts that we're talking about here because one, we're like, and this is something I've struggled with of distinguishing the differences with people because I'm always like, I've always been in this viewpoint of like, I want to connect and I want to grow and I want to have as many close bonding relationships that I could ever have as much as possible. And throughout my life, I've definitely seen not everybody is on the same page with that. And that's been really hard for me. And the other
I
thing
was,
that I like that you're pointing out is that we as people in the US have a much different life than people in Rwanda or people in Japan or like just anywhere else. It's like we have a specific kind of like set of lifestyles that we get to live, and because we are in this kind of superpower nation, so to speak, or we're in a first world country, and same with Canada. But it's not the same everywhere else. And I really like that you're pointing that out because it helps me understand that there is a difference. not everyone gets to kind of have the same thing in a way. And I really appreciate you pointing that out.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. I agree. But we forget that we carry our bias and our assumptions with us around everywhere like it's normal. I mean, we all do it.
Mm-hmm.
We all have our lens, but we don't do ourselves favors when we forget that we have one, because we bring it, and it's like we can see it better in others, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, but I don't have one, but that's actually not the case. So it's very useful to be like, well, what did I grow up in? I understood being white for the first time growing up in Maine when I was in college looking at a study abroad program, and I had locked myself into an American culture major because I kept failing at getting the independent study major. They were just like, you're not really clear on what you do later. Bye. I kept trying, but they're like, why don't you go over to our sister office that takes all the rejects and go to the American culture program? Design your major over there. I ended up living on a Native American reservation in South Dakota, thinking I was going to study abroad in a culture that was like, oh, I'll be an anthropologist, study Dakota Sioux culture. Man, if that wasn't the most profound education that I got, because I get there and I'm a minority for the first time in my life, racial minority, I learned more about being white than being what Native American culture was, because you can't see inside other people's culture. You can only see what looks on the outside. That was really amazing for me to be like, I have a really different relationship with time. I have a different relationship with the pace of conversation, small talk, like filler, discomfort with silence, let alone the history of genocide, the history that I carry, in my upbringing, the things that I learned were true about America that are definitely not true here. I mean, just that was a transformative experience. And why does this matter? We all get to encounter our lens if we're lucky and really analyze our relationship to it. I'm like, am I going to carry this now unconsciously? That game's over. I can't do that anymore. I'm now sensitized, and was like the biggest gift for me. Amazing. I still visit my family there. I was there last month. It's been a lifelong relationship. And my thesis in college was about white racial identity, and I knew nobody was talking about this. But it matters because people don't like me even talking about it sometimes, but I'm like, we got to create more of this in the world, because we hurt people when we assume our lens is their lens.
Wow.
Well, yeah, I have to applaud you. That's a huge awakening. And being able to, confront and go from the experience and also be part of the Native American experience and just see from that perspective, like their living, their education, their culture, and bringing in yours. And now I think it's great because then you could be in more rooms and speaking on that and helping people become more aware, right? And of all the different cultures and how we need to celebrate each other in those areas, right? And come together as human, which I think is, definitely these conversations are well needed.
Part of why I do what I do is because I thought, how can I change the world? Just me. I was like, well, I can work with this many people, set number of people in my lifetime. But if I work with people who have audiences and they each have this number,
Oh,
and I help them find the transformative awakening in themselves,
yeah.
I have a better chance of helping shift perspectives in the world and our relationship to each other than I would if I just served, people who don't have an audience. So that's why, honestly, this is the vehicle for my business. It's a mission.
I love that.
It's great. And it's an amazing platform that you've built to be able to help amplify, your voice and the voices and BIPOC voices as well. I think, those conversations and just, again, removing a lot of the barriers that the BIPOC, unfortunately face and having more allies on board to say, hey, this is how we can work together and support each other, like more locally. And, it's so big to support like local business, for example, and being aware of how we can consciously spend those dollars to help each other rise. So good for
You
you.
know
That's
what?
amazing.
I don't say BIPOC community very much because I only can speak for being a white woman whose job is to take over the mantle of dismantling racism, because people of color have been doing this for the whole time. And it's actually not their job. It's white people's job to dismantle white supremacy. So it's like I have to create this conversation for white people.
Yes, good
I
for
love it.
you. We need more of the white voices. Good for you. That's a great.
We don't
We
need more of
applaud
the
you,
white
girl. We applaud
voices.
you.
White people have had their time. I mean,
Right, right.
wealth, the trillions of dollars
Yeah.
coming, transfer of wealth in the next generation is going to be in the hands of women and people of color. And white people, especially men, are not ready for that.
No, not at all.
We're
And
getting
that
everyone
shift needs
ready.
to come. Yes, yes. We're preparing. It's our time. It's our time.
Yes.
I love
That's
it.
why I was like, okay, Kamala Harris, you're a beacon, but do we want to go down this rabbit hole?
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
Wow. And I'm curious to hear your perspective on this, like as a white person, because I don't exactly know what the, so I'm really curious to hear like what is your perspective on it and like what does it
What
mean
is
to
it
you?
exactly?
Yeah.
What is it? What is the perspective you're asking me about?
The white the I guess the racial speculation of a white person. Like what
Oh, oh. Are you asking me like what's the big deal? Kind of like what's the problem? I
um
love these conversations and I
cool.
think I'm really good at it.
Yeah,
But I want to know exactly what conversation you're wanting to have about it.
yeah. I'm trying to understand it from the perspective of like as as a white person and other white people because I was raised in Montana, like literally I think one of the whitest states in the US. And I'm curious like what is it from the white lens, so to speak, because you said you went to a Native American reservation. Like I don't know how to I can't be aware of it because I don't know what like I don't have
Mm,
another viewpoint or another awareness around
okay.
what we're talking about.
Great. I love that. I love that you can ask a question about what you don't even know you're asking about. I get exactly what you're saying. You're like, I
Thank
don't
you.
actually have enough information to ask this. Yeah, really well done. I got it. What is it? Okay. I was taken in a van with two other women from the South Dakota State University Brookings campus. This is 2002 for a tour by Valerian Three Irons, who was the founder of this service learning program, International Partnership of Service Learning. I had to take a leave of absence from my Vassar College to go because there was no relationship with it. Like, what are you talking about? You're going to take college classes, live on a reservation? Like, what are you doing? And they ended up actually adopting this program after I did my program. So I was like, all right, good job. But he created this program for people to come live on, people like me to come live on a reservation and understand the history of this country and your place in it for the first time. So he took us in a van across South Dakota to Badlands to Crazy Horse Monument to, I mean, all over for days and days. We're in a van looking at the endless Great Plains. It makes me want to cry because part of my soul lives there. And what I learned was what life really was for someone who was in a pure, very spiritually connected, like community that was living in the rhythm of the plains and the seasons, and they knew how to hunt and they knew how to have just this abundant, beautiful life. And then here come Washichu people, which is the term for white people, he who steals the fat. Because the story goes, the first encounter with white people was when they were freezing and cold in the South Dakota, what we now know as South Dakota plains. They came to settle, and the Dakota people, Dakota means friend or ally, and they were seeing their suffering of these white people who had no idea how to survive. And they offered them food. The white people refused. And in the night, those white people came and stole the food. And that is just the foreshadowing for everything that came after that. All of the battles, Battle of Custer, where, I mean, I learned, to answer your question, I learned the play by play that was not theoretical. It's not history. It's not like gone. people that I actually am a descendant of John C. Calhoun. My middle name's Calhoun. He was a vice president of this country, and he was an extreme racist, pro-slavery person. So it's actually a really personal conversation for me because I actually carry the history in my DNA of promoting violence to oppress and kill people in order to have power and dominance over a space. And that's a really big conversation in my soul, because if we can do anything, it's how to invite healing for the next generation, one person at a time. And I learned this history about Custer coming and killing the women and the children, this child suckling its dead mother's breast in this freezing night when they like surprise this community, everyone's dead. And I mean, there are still walks. My friends on the reservation still walk the walk of every year from when their tribe was forced from their grounds to live on a reservation and had blankets, covered in smallpox, and it wiped out everybody with this disease. I mean, just all of these things looked over time, all the treaties they made say, okay, you can live in this amount of land, and we'll give you 40 acres and a mule. And actually they never did that. And they suffered and they died, and they had to like get government handouts to survive. And then the reservation, and they built housing for them, and they didn't have the teepees anymore and didn't roam with the buffalo and follow the seasons. All of this is to say it was an evil, scary, dark time. And the Native people don't get to forget that because they never came out of it. But the white people did. We made out just fine, and we benefited from it. And we still are. I still am.
Right.
And they did not. And people are like, oh, they're, whatever the stereotypes are. There's a reason why things are the way they are. We created that on purpose. So all of that is in, I can't unknow any of that. So I stood on a field, the top of the field one time. We stopped at the van. We was picking herbs, showing us the native method of like prayer, of picking sage. And it's like praying to the land and praying to your ancestors. And it just kind of opened up my eyes to how people who are so deeply hurt in the world still are here, still are surviving, but still respect their tradition, and like this tenuous, beautiful relationship with the religion that was, by the way, outlawed for years. It's like a window into this primordial, like, why are we all here? There's connection where I'm a white woman standing here being taught how to pick sage by this man, this medicine man. Why am I allowed to do this? And so that awakened something, and I'm here to share that, I guess. No, I don't expect anyone else. And so I had white friends who went back to Vassar, and my friends were like, we're going to go sweat tonight. And like, white friends going to do a sweat lodge and stuff. And I had an allergy to like all things white after that, but I am white. So it's like, how do you hold that? Right?
Right.
All the cultural appropriation that we now see, the whole thing. But I have grace for that, because we're all on our own journey for discovering how we play into perpetuating pain in the world, because we all do. It's just, where are we in the journey of discovering that? That's what matters. The best thing we can do is ask, what is my lens? And how can I be more responsible around that and care for other people better, and like learn and like clean up my act and become more conscious? That's the best we can do. And then if it gets you further down the road, we become an anti-racist, you become clear in like how white supremacy actually operates, not out there, but like actually in here. That's the best we can do, and to just have these conversations. That was a long rant, but I think
No, that was so many powerful statements. Yeah, no, a powerful conversation where these are so needed to hear, especially knowing like the history and how you embraced, right? And being able to understand and experience, and now can speak on that level to say, hey, you know what, now I was a part of the Native Indian like experience, at least to understand like the pain that they went through, and know like from the stolen lands and how we're living on their land and how we can respect that, right? And bringing that humbles us, I think, even more so, where you're like, okay, like how can we give back and now work together as community to restore what was taken from them years ago. And having these conversations, I think even the entrepreneur space and the small business space too, is like coming back and saying, how again can we work together in these communities to now get them out of those barriers, unfortunately, that they faced from years of oppression. until now. So what conversations and what can we do from an actionable standpoint to make that difference? I think that's huge. And the work that you're doing and having these conversations and being in those rooms, especially as a white woman, I think it makes awaken other people to like, oh, okay, well, this creates a whole new era of awareness where you're like, wow, okay, this is powerful. And how can we better support each other? I think this is where we all need to come together as community and bring everybody to the table, so it's no longer, the white dominant table, if you may, right? So I know in Canada we have the North Initiative, but we're like, okay, well, how many colored folk are you actually bringing to the table? How many women leaders are actually at the table leading these conversations? How many Black people, Indigenous, right? So you say you're doing the work, but what is happening with the Black North Initiative? Like, what is happening with these initiatives that these corporations and companies are coming to and saying that they're doing, but they're not being held accountable to actually doing the work? It's all like surface, right?
That is so
So,
critical, Amanda.
yeah.
Oh my gosh. I was at a global chamber conference in Phoenix last spring. It was an incredible event, but one thing happened that kind of showed the work that's actually being done and not being done. There's a Native American performance, beautiful regalia, wonderful, like spiritual dance. And I have a different relationship with the seeing of it. This is not the right setting in the corporate hotel ballroom. And this is not the right tone for the reception, the receiving of the teaching of why all of this is the way it is. These dancers came and they left and everyone's like clapping. Do we understand why that's a problem in this room? I'm like, they need to be at the table. Why are these people not on the panel? I just couldn't believe the
Yeah,
relationship
see,
with
good
Indigenous people.
questions,
And I
right?
asked the organizers and I never heard an answer, but it doesn't mean I'm giving up.
Yeah.
But you have to lean into this, you know? And so I actually, when you say it's humbling to hear this, I remember feeling like when I came off the reservation for the first time, everything's an emergency. I'm like, nobody knows. I need to tell everybody, you know? And so it was an emergency. It was like, this is happening now, right now. And
Yes.
I have to just say, talking with you all, this is the first time I've had this level of depth in this conversation ever since. And I just want to tell you that because it's a
Amazing.
record scratch moment often for me to say, like, I'm a white anti-racist. And actually, that's why I need to say it more. You understand?
Yeah, no, I think that's huge. And making the statements and acknowledging, and then, but I think it helps other folks become more comfortable in terms of expressing this as well and
Mhm.
diving deeper within their own culture, right? And what happened throughout their history and their time and bringing that to the forefront and saying, okay, now we can acknowledge, now what can we do to make a difference, right? Which is the next step.
I would think in the business community, the best relationship that I can make is you don't come out with these topics. Like I'm the chair of the DEIB committee for a board. I want it to be a white woman,
Yes.
but I don't actually say DIB in the things because people they just don't, they assume they know what your agenda is.
Ah.
You got to get them on connection do you feel represented? That's how you get people to the table, right?
Exactly. Yes, it's so true.
In service of including everyone.
Right.
But to finish up with the idea of bringing this to the business world, it starts, I think, with those of us who've succeeded viewing. We have a choice. It's like, am I going to sit back and let success be like flowing to me, or am I going to divert some of that flow and make it success for other people? And I think that really matters. It's a big shift in a business person, especially mid to late career, to start to say, and it gets to be on the speaking circuit, but partly in your entrepreneurial journey, changing your model to a profit sharing model, or creating businesses that are like and somehow mission driven, socially beneficial. We need to create more of our success as a vehicle that others can ride in and develop their own.
Yes, and I think that's huge. It's creating more opportunity and resources and support where now, exactly the Indigenous community, people of color can dive into and being able to work with other communities. I think that's where, the difference and the change is needed, is giving those resources, because that's where the barrier is getting access. So
That's
being able to
exactly
have
right.
that conversation and have that access can only enhance each other's success and help rise everyone together, right, as a community.
I call it ladders and doors, right? You need a ladder up from where you are. I've been given ladders. White people get ladders. You're born with ladders. You kidding me? And doors that are closed being opened for you. If we
I
can
love
give
that.
people ladders and doors, I think about that a lot. This is going to be the name of my podcast, but I'm like,
I
people
was
will
like,
think
that's a whole book. You should
construction.
do a whole book around ladders and doors. That's amazing. Yes.
It'll be a chapter in a book. Yeah, that's a good
Yeah.
idea. Ladders and doors. It's just a philosophy, right?
I
Yeah.
think that's a great book name right there because then it just shows, right? Because
Yeah.
visually you can see it as you speak it.
Access and opportunity. That's just what you said. Access is the doorway to come
Yeah.
in. Opportunity is the way to go up from where you are. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that.
So those of us with platforms on any level, it's a way, first of all, to get what we're saying, Ian, it builds community with the right people, you know?
Mm-hmm.
When we start having these conversations in the world, some people will tune in and some will not.
Mm.
That's okay. We want
Yeah.
the wrong people to walk away. We do. We don't have time for that. But
Mm-hmm.
we do have time for is to build with people who are ready to build now with what we're doing. I mean, I've just
Yeah.
decided that at this point in my life, I can't convert everybody, and that's okay. Some people will listen and maybe be curious, maybe not. Some people will walk away and some will stay and they'll lean in and they'll ask more and it will change their life.
Wow. I really appreciate what you're sharing because for years I've had this internal kind of like struggle within myself because being raised in Montana, it was like everyone waved to each other. It was a totally normal thing. Like
Yep.
people in Montana are very polite to each other. One of my like things that totally stood me back, which only happened in Montana, is there's this 4-lane road, which is 45 miles per hour. And on one side is a residential area where people live, and on the other side is where a grocery store. So this commonly happens where people are trying to cross the road. And only in Montana have I ever seen this where people on a 40 mile per hour road will come to a complete stop on both sides and let someone safely cross. And there's not like a button they have to press, there's not a sign that exists. It's just an agreement that was made for being considerate with another person. And as I have moved further and further south and just being in like Utah, Colorado, and also Florida, like it made me realize like I was raised around these incredibly kind people, and it's hard for me to be in places where like people just want to kind of shove you out of the way, and I'm just like, what is going on? Like I was so culturally shocked to see that there was this truck that had a trailer behind it, and it not only hit this woman, it like damaged her vehicle so badly that she ended up getting hurt and he drove off. And this woman was like, her car was not okay. And the woman inside was not okay. And I saw the man's face when he was doing it. And it was a look of pure evil. Like he was intentionally like I don't know if it was like intentional, but he was like doing it and it was like there was no remorse. And I was totally just like shocked that this was like even a thing. And to kind of bring this back to what you're talking about, it just makes me like really appreciate having these conversations and being aware that like not everybody is on board, because that's something that I've been struggling to deal with on a personal level and say like why aren't we all on the same page here? Like I thought we were all like we go to the same church. I thought we had similar friends. We listen to the same music. Like why are we again? Like this makes no sense to me. And so to have your viewpoints and saying like, oh yeah, not everybody's on board. It's like that it might sound simple, but it's like helps me out on such a tremendous level. And so I can open the door and I can try to shake someone's hand, but commonly they'll smack it away. And I'm kind of like having to like just adjust and say like, oh, I'm used to that. The other thing I really like about what you're talking about and what you were so open about was having your historical past of like I'm trying to remember exactly who it was, but with being around the natives and then like and turning it around, having that past, and then also going into this Native American reservation, it really melted my heart when you said that. So I really appreciate you sharing.
Thank you. You guys are so really deep listeners. We need more of that. I want to offer a thought to you, Ian, because I so understand the struggle of when I was in New York. I remember everyone had their New York mean face. It's just like the sense that no one belongs. Like, not even do I not belong. No, you don't belong. I don't. No one belongs here. It's just this sense of like estrangement,
Mhm.
community estrangement. This weird New York effect, and it's not that way in all things, but for a visitor, it felt like that. And what can we do? It's like when you walk into a room, there are some people whose hands just don't need to be
Yes.
shaken,
Yeah, I
shaken.
get it.
I think about this a lot. I had a dream from a Buddhist teacher. I never met him, but I had dreams about him, recurring dreams for years.
Wow.
And he said something to me when he was sitting in a chair. I was standing next to him, and he would give these talks. He died in the 80s, like when I was 3.
Huh.
But in my dream, he said, do it with your energy. And I've had to really understand what that means, but it's coming to mind for you because you're looking for kind people because you're a kind person. And I'm not making a joke.
Mhm.
You need it because you need to live in a world like that because that is you. And you have the capacity to create that. So you don't necessarily, what if you didn't walk into the room looking for people to be kind to you, but you're kind to others? And those people who really need that become
Mm.
your people.
Wow. That's a really big shift of viewpoint.
That's
So
huge. Yeah,
you are
you
the
are that
energy
light.
of kindness and you magnetize kind people because they need you. And you need them, but we've got to start somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
Wow. Totally
It's sort of
touches
like
my heart.
if not us, who?
Right.
If not now, when?
Hmm.
I
Right.
think that's a very helpful thing for me. So like you can do it with your energy. You can come into a room knowing you're here to just shine your light. And those who aren't here for that are going to
Mm.
walk away and you're going to be glad because you just saved yourself a big effing headache. So the people who do look at you and smile back, those are the people you want to hang out with. That will be true in
Wow.
literally every room you ever go into for the rest of your life.
That's
Just go to the people who smile back. It's just a very easy rule.
oh wow, that's the rule. Okay, great.
You come in with your smile, someone meets your eyes, and you draw over and you just have a conversation, just two people. They might be a great friend soon, or a mentor, or someone you can mentor. But this is just how it works. When you come in with your energy and you do it because you're kind and you're ready to like live in that world, you just be that world, and that world comes to you. And that's like, then you'll feel better. And you'll be like, oh, actually, the world is kind here in Florida. I just thought it wasn't. But now I realize that I'm kind and I can magnetize like the kind tribe around me.
The kind
You're
tribe.
like that beacon of light, like the lighthouse, right? You just bring them in. You bring in the good people, the good souls that are coming in and doing the work with you.
This is magical. There, I had this really big like understanding. I appreciate with both what both of you are saying is that there was this book that Charles Duhigg wrote called Super Communicators. And in this interview that he talks with Lewis Howes, he mentions that super communicators, it's just a set of skills that are learned. Like you can learn how to be a biologist or learn a second language, and being a super communicator is just a set of skills. And one thing that he brought up is that super communicators laugh a lot. And it's not because anything's funny. It's because the other person is trying to connect with that person. And when you mentioned smiling, I think smiling is the lower leveled version of laughing because that shows the other person wants to connect with that other person. And so that was like a huge realization that just helped me out a lot. So I appreciate
That's an amazing, amazing insight.
it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Maybe you're unlocking your super communicator power right now because you love to laugh. I think we all love to laugh, but we're on a podcast because we want to connect with each other and we
Hmm.
want to share conversation that matters. There's a
Yes.
magnetic quality, I think.
You saying that just helped me understand why podcasting is different from normal conversation. Because when you're at work or you're at, on the road or you're meeting someone I mean, like in dinner table conversations, it makes it more apparent, but like on the phone, for example, it's not always obvious. But I think in dinner conversations or like at barbecues or specifically at podcasting, like the attempt is to connect with the other person. Like that is the usually. I have seen some podcasts where it's not. But yeah, I find that more often than not, that the other person is trying to connect with that person. They're trying to listen. They're trying to have a deeper conversation than just the surface level, like, hey, how are you? Or hey, I don't have time to have this conversation right now.
Wow, maybe that's why you've excelled in this area, because that's something you are about.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this has been so good. So many insights and so many great learnings and sharing. So thank you guys. Yeah, and thank you Ian, for putting this podcast together. This is incredible. And Joanna, yeah, I can't wait for your book and for your podcast too. You have so many great teachings in that already.
Thank you. The book, I think, the working title is called, I think I told you this last time, How to Act, the Surprising Guide to Authenticity. So the double entendre there is how to act, because I talk a lot about my theater background, my acting training actors, now public speakers, but it's also how to act and meaning how to engage, how to make a choice, how to act, take a stand. Yeah.
That's incredible.
I'm testing that to see your reaction, to see if you're like, that makes sense.
Yeah, no,
The working title, I'm testing field, it's beta testing.
Yeah. Hey, keep putting the feelers out. I like it. I think it's going to resonate well with the audience. So, and people, I think especially now in our society, we need more authentic, real people. This social media land is just too much, right? You just don't know what's real out there, and people getting back grounded to their authentic self and helping, acknowledge that. What is that? I think those are conversations, again, definitely needed, and the awareness is so powerful.
I'm trying to bring this, I'm in the ideation phase of an app to bring doing this type of work into a greater sector. So we'll see how that carries on to the social media world.
Yeah, hey, let us know when you're ready to launch. We'll definitely help support. Put it out there to our communities.
Yeah, maybe I'll ask you guys to help me try it out.
Happy to help.
Yeah, we're down to be beta users. So I'm sure there's a bunch of people we can share that out to as well.
Amazing. Thanks for such a great conversation. You both are really inspiring. We pulled out a lot of really interesting topics today. Unexpected.
I agree.
Yeah, I like how that organically just happened. So that was amazing. The best conversations come out that way, right?
Yeah.
I agree. Cool. Well, I know we're kind of coming to close here. I really appreciate your time, and I just want to say thanks for your energy and everything that you had to share, because it was certainly valuable for me to have those sort of shifts in viewpoint and walk away with a new thought process. And I've honestly said that this more than once, but I mean, like, I feel like podcasting is like a therapy session all by itself. It's just incredible.
And thank you for holding space so other people can benefit from it too. Like the people who listen to this. It's a great platform you have, both of you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
And thank you so much. Well, we look forward to seeing all the great work that you're putting out there as well. So do, make sure to keep in touch, and any handles you wanted to draw for people to follow, connect at?
My handles are joannahortonmcpherson.com. I work with people really on their transformative message, and it matters what we're talking about in the world and what conversation we're having, especially when you're speaking in front of crowds or building a following. So that's what my content's about. Basically, a lot of what we just talked about.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing. Now, this has been so good. We look forward to more conversations.
Same.
And yeah, we'll keep building from here.
Thanks, guys.
No, thank you.